All right, Nancy, how are you doing today?
Hi, JZ. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. I know I was on your podcast and now you're on mine. So I
Yeah.
loved what we talked about last time, and my audience definitely is interested in your solopreneurship expertise.
Well, I'm excited to share all my learnings.
So I'll do a quick intro and then you'll do a quick intro and then we'll get into it. And if anyone is in the audience, this is a reschedule of the planned live stream 3 hours from now. So feel free to ask your impromptu questions, comment, where you're coming from, whether it's raining or not today. And we'll be sure to put your responses up on the stage. So just really quickly, I'm CallMeJZ.ai, and I have had this podcast for a year, and now I'm teaching people how to start their own podcast to book more calls and to sell more just by being their true selves.
Oh, wow. I didn't
And
know you've had this podcast for 1 year.
yeah, I started it when I was no coding and launching my own products as a founder and product manager. And so it was just a way to keep talking to people because,
Yeah.
as a product leader, you're like usually talking to people every half hour for, 8 hours a day. And
Yes.
when I was no coding, I wasn't talking to anyone. I was just talking to the code and I got really lonely. So
Makes sense. No wonder you're such an expert. You've been doing this for a long time.
oh, thanks. And I think as product managers, we're so used to interviewing people for user research and customer discovery calls. So it's like a easy way to do prospecting and lead generation
I love
as
it.
well.
I
But
love it.
yeah, you do a lot of speaking as well. So tell us about you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nancy. I am a solopreneurship coach. Um, I started I started my coaching journey in product management, and I learned so much about solopreneurship through a lot of learnings, through a lot of my coaching. Not me coaching others, but me learning from other business coaches. I am now trying to share the knowledge with as many people as possible who might consider solopreneurship as another path in their career. What I learned for me was I was conditioned to believe that climbing the corporate ladder and having a quote unquote big career in tech was the only way. But I've since discovered that that is not the only way and that there is a different way. So really excited to talk more about that.
Yeah, the only way, I think it's the dream way or the only dream that people have had. But I think I even saw Becca Camp posting about this yesterday that that dream has changed. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yes, I love your clarification that it was the only dream that I had. And I don't think that I'm the only one with that type of mentality. It's just so common um, in just how a lot of people think. And it's dreams on different levels. One is to be a product manager and then to work in big tech and then to become a people manager and then climbing that ladder and then get really fancy titles, become a CPO one day. That was definitely my dream. And I really thought that that was a path for me. Um, it all started my pivot started when I got laid off from a job that I really, really, really loved. And that was really a blessing in disguise, even though I was very hurt at that time. But what happened was I just went on this soul searching journey and I became a coach serendipitously. It was not planned. And unlike many people who think, oh, I have to do this thing on the side and get it ready and then pivot one day when it's ready, I didn't have that. I just pivoted without a foundation. I started with zero, no audience, no personal branding. It was just nothing. And so I built something out of nothing. And from the act of building that made me grow so much just as a human being. I learned so much about myself. And now I I want to um, just make this path a little bit more common for people uh, so that more people will understand that there is another way if you choose to believe that there is another way.
Well, everyone in the audience, because I know I can see you're there, and I'd love to hear your questions for Nancy, or even type in like, is your dream to be CPO or founder or solopreneur? Those are very different dreams. But I'll ask a question that I'm getting privately. Nancy, is the fear substantiated? Not everyone can be a successful solopreneur. Maybe there are not enough clients, or you can't reach them. Like, is the fear founded?
Well, I think this fear is not that different from the dream of becoming a CPO or becoming a VP of product or becoming a CEO or founder. Not everyone can be the CPO, and yet a lot of people have that dream, right? And not everyone can be a successful startup founder, and yet a lot of people have that dream. So I wouldn't let the fear stop you if this is a path that you're open to exploring.
That's true. Very few people become CPO,
Hmm.
and I would say every product manager dreams of
Yes,
that. Product
that's
is a
exactly
very
it.
uh, take charge kind of personality. So do
Hmm.
you agree that every product manager wants to be CPO one
I
day?
think so. I, I
Yeah.
I believe every product manager wants to lead and influence and have impact.
And it's okay if they don't get there because they still try, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So then if you're doing the solopreneur route, you've talked about the CEO mentality.
Mhm.
Tell us more.
CEO mentality is the opposite of employee mentality. And as much as PMs like to think that we are leaders and we are shaping strategy, there's there's this sense in the product management role that we need to ladder up to something bigger than us. We need to make sure our product ladders up to the business goals, for example. Product could be a core part of the business, but product is not the business. And so for us, we're always laddering up to something. That is the PM mindset, which is also employee mindset, laddering up. Now, CEO mindset, there's nothing to ladder up to. Maybe you're laddering up to the market. But when you're running your own business, you are leading the entire business. You're setting everything, you're setting directions, you're making all the decisions. So, same thing here. Even though I'm just a business of one person, I am leading myself. So, there's no longer this concept of laddering up to something bigger than me, other than what's happening in the market and how can I serve. So that is the biggest difference between a CEO mindset and an employee mindset or a PM mindset.
It's pretty hard to be, I mean, a solopreneur. As I know, my persona and my target audience, my market changes without
Mhm.
me changing it. And then
Yeah.
I'm uh, trying to find it before it changes. Like, I'm trying to tap the hidden market. And then I also change it based on, opportunity size and ability to capture the market. So
Mhm.
I definitely feel like I'm using my PM skills at 10x as a
Oh,
solo.
definitely. So we're leveraging a lot of our PM skills as a CEO, as a founder. But there's this element of self leadership that is 10x or even 100x more than exercising our PM muscles. And self leadership, for example, could look like, what is this offer in terms of, let's say for me, a coaching package or coaching offer? What is this? I have to create it out of nothing. And typically, yes, in product work, we're also creating new products, but we're also operating under a lot of constraints. Engineering needs this, sales needs this, marketing, etc., or stakeholders or founders, whatever it is. Um, those constraints don't really exist in your own business. You could create your own constraints, but with a new type of mindset, those constraints don't really need to be constraints anymore. For example, pricing. How do I set my own price? I could compare myself with competitors, with other coaches, or I could choose not to compare and just set my price from within and decide this thing that I'm offering should be valued at this much. So, all of that falls under the umbrella of self leadership. You're just really leading yourself at the end of the day.
So as people gain the CEO mindset, as product managers specifically gain the CEO mindset, is it just this sense of freedom, or what do you see as being like a barrier to gaining this mindset and
Yeah.
then succeeding with the
Well,
CEO mindset?
one is, I would say, sense of self awareness comes before everything else. And I love this quote. I think it's from Socrates, and it's written in the um, temple of Apollo in Greece. It says, "Know thyself." And really, it's everything starts from the place of you really knowing yourself before you could take action that is actually aligned with who you are and what you actually want. Now, a lot of PMs are trained and conditioned to take action based on things that are external to what the PM actually thinks. That's just how we're trained, and that's part of the job. We take action because the market or because engineering, because marketing, because sales, because founder, like because of stakeholders, X, Y, and Z. But when we are our own CEO, then all the actions come from within. Or you could choose to take action as a reaction to what is external to you. But in that place, your actions would not be rooted in who you really are. So I choose to take action based on who I am. And that comes with a lot of inner work and self awareness. And so for me, an example of self awareness that I didn't realize about myself is I get a lot of energy by energizing other people. Now, there's another type of people who gets a lot of energy by creating something new. They're called the manifester persona according to human design. Human design, which I love, it's a system that I think is so amazingly accurate. It's kind of like astrology, but it's a combination of different systems or modalities that are designed to help you understand who you are, like in your core. So I took my human design and I fall under the persona of the generator. And generator people get energy by generating energy from for others. That makes so much sense to me. And that is why I get so much joy and fulfillment and just really positive feelings when I'm able to uplift other people and not so much joy when I'm creating new products.
Wow, what is this human design framework? Tell us more.
Well, I don't know who created it, but it's similar to astrology where you get your own birth chart. So you put in your birthday and your time of birth, and it spits out a chart that says who you are and what you're here to do on Earth in this lifetime. So I took my human design, I pulled my human design chart and I looked into it and really, really resonated on what my chart says about me. So much so that I feel like I should have taken that. I should have pulled my chart years ago. It would have made so much more sense with um, a lot more self awareness and clarity.
We'll get in touch with Nancy about how to find this assessment.
Yeah, you can just
Uh,
Google human design. There's a lot, and it's free online.
okay. It's interesting because I talked to another Jay Z yesterday who, I think I've known like 5 to 10 Jay Z's in my life,
Oh my
in addition,
gosh.
in addition to the real one, of course. And so he's a coach, and he was saying something very similar, that he really loves helping other people. And
Mhm.
as I learn more about coaching, it's about asking questions,
Yes.
kind of like, a researcher. And my question to you is, you were a people manager at
Mhm.
Roku and perhaps at Facebook. And so there's a lot of mentorship and development that you do as a people manager. How is that different than being a coach?
Managers aren't really focusing on coaching. So they say that managers are supposed to coach, but managers are not trained to actually know how to coach. And coaching is also very different from advising. You could give advice, but it doesn't mean that you're coaching. So if you think about a sports coach, they're not just giving you advice. They're actually giving you a plan, and they are working with you on your plan. A manager could give you a plan, but they're not working with you. They're in fact judging you. That's not what a coach does. For me, I never played sports, but I was competitive in piano. My piano teacher was my coach. So he helped me win competitions and scholarships. And the highlight of my piano career was a solo performance with the Honolulu Symphony. That is kind of like a, a big sports competition that you go through, and the training is very similar to sports training. There's the act of learning how to play in an instrument, and then there's also an act of how to actually perform and how to actually compete. Now, a coach will put together a plan and put you through situations to actually stress you out so that you could actually shine in the midst of stress. So, for example, I started performing in first grade and then second grade and third grade, and it's not once a year or anything like it's like once a month. And so that the performance muscle was it started to form when I was in first grade, but the actual audition for the Honolulu Symphony was in junior year in high school. So it took years of training to actually learn how to compete and how to get on stage without freaking out. So that in itself is coaching, which is very different from um, giving advice. Now, at work, your manager will not do that. A manager could give you advice, but they're also judging you. And a manager can't really be themselves either because they work for the company. They are an agent of the company. They have to set expectations according to what the company believes a high performer should look like. So, being a manager is very different from being a coach.
Yeah, I think we've both had experiences where we get to develop talent, but they're rare, right? So, like, I've helped people transition from analysts to product managers or designers to product managers. And it's very rare that you have that time to develop the skill and
Yes.
give them the stretch role, because most of the time you're laddering up to the OKR and
Mhm.
achieving an outcome, a result
Yes.
or output. So you're
Yes.
saying with coaching, uh, it's a shift, right? You invest directly in that person.
Yes, that's correct. And I would say that it's possible the manager has an OKR that is related to coaching if their manager created that OKR for them. So, for example, at Facebook, sometimes to go from um, M1 to M2, just for example, you need to prove that you're able to coach someone on your team and get them from 6 to 7 or 5, like IC 6 to IC 7 or IC 5 to IC 6. You have to prove that you could do that to get your promotion. Now, in that case, since your growth is dependent on you coaching someone else, then you take it very seriously. Then you do it proactively and try to promote someone, but it's for your own growth. But for other times when the manager is not directly goaled on coaching others, they wouldn't really focus on it because they don't need to.
And it's just for that promotion cycle, that like 1 year or quarter where you're being
Mhm.
evaluated for M1 to M2.
Yeah, or from M2 to director, or from D1 to D2.
Yeah, that makes sense. So finding yourself, what is the impact on the business then? How does it feel?
Well, it feels like the business is an extension of me. That means the business can only thrive if I'm thriving. And as a PM and as an employee, I operate in a very nine to five, 9 to 6, 9 to 7 kind of schedule because I've been working for almost 20 years. I'm very used to that type of lifestyle. But as my own as a solopreneur, I own my own schedule. So now I'm actually able to control how I work and when I work. And this in itself is a mindset shift. So for example, my kid is on spring break this week. She doesn't have school, and so she's just home. The old me would be freaking out because, oh, I need childcare. I can't work. I can't focus when she's home, etc. But the new me now understand my business will thrive when I thrive and not the other way around. Whereas, and as an employee, you thrive when the business thrives. But as a solopreneur, business thrives when I thrive. So, an example of that is I decided to take her to the park during business hours. And while I was at the park, because I created space for creativity and for inspiration, while I was at the park, I was inspired to tweak this thing in the offer. And I had this new idea on how to phrase this thing that I'm offering. And when I came back, I immediately implemented this new idea that I got at the park, and I was able to convert a prospect to a client. And I was able to do that because I was thriving. Like I allowed myself to be flexible, to be open to a different way of being. And that resulted in me being more open to inspiration, which resulted in business growth. So that's an example of the business thrives when I thrive and not the other way around.
Yeah, I love that because in corporate, you're focused on the business
Yes.
first,
Mhm.
not, I mean, the customer, the persona is
Yes.
second, right? But
Yes.
I love when my clients succeed. And I love that I'm still thinking about that all the time. And it inspires me to go back and, like you said, rewrite the offer or the
Yes.
structure or the pricing.
Yes.
So tell us more. Like, can you share that example or a similar example, like
Well,
in
that
detail?
that inspiration came from that inspiration is in regard to a piece of copy in my offer letter. And this is actually one of the topics that we were thinking of talking about, which is copywriting. Copywriting is something that I had never learned as a PM. And as a PM, it's also very easy for us to think that marketing and sales are kind of the same thing. And I personally did not take a lot of time to differentiate the two. To me, they're kind of just business. And then I became my own business, and I needed to learn the difference. Well, at first, I didn't think that I need to learn the difference. To me, in the first part of my journey into solopreneurship, I thought marketing and selling were the same, and it turns out that they're actually very different because while you can market to almost everyone, you cannot sell to everyone. You can only sell to people who are ready to buy. That is the biggest difference between marketing and sales. And how do you get people closer to buying? That is done through copywriting. And copywriting is where you are really connecting with your prospects and with your leads. It's through your copy, unless you want to have all kinds of sales calls all day and every day, but that is not scalable. The way you scale is by having that connection through your words, and your words could be delivered live or it could be written words, which is copywriting. And so the inspiration that I discovered while I was at the park is related to copy. So I was working with a prospect, and the offer that I originally created was, let me help you onboard as effectively as possible. That's the offer. But when I was at the park, the inspiration was, well, it's not that you want to onboard more effectively. What you really want is to establish credibility fast. Even though the offer is the same, but the copy is different. But one is closer to what they actually want, is to establish credibility and not really to onboard more effectively. So when I was able to just tweak the copy, even though the underlying offer was the same, that converted in sales. So that is an example of me tuning in to what the people actually want and trying to represent it as accurately as possible with words and copy.
So, what happened at the park to inspire you to pivot from onboarding to credibility?
Well, I grabbed my journal. I am a big journaling person. I swear by it, and it works like wonders. It's magic. So I grabbed my journal. I just sat down on the bench while my daughter is on the swings. And I just journaled. And it's really just what is on my mind. Well, I just talk with a prospect. What do they actually want? And just like started writing down my stream of consciousness. And the words, um, establishing credibility fast, it just came out. But while I was on the computer and like typing out the offer, it didn't come out until I actually let myself be free.
I love that because you're talking about founder-led sales, right? So as a product manager, you have a huge sales team, you have a huge marketing team, and they do all of that.
That's
But in
exactly it.
And so in founder-led sales, you're much more connected to your client. You know what their
Mhm.
goals are. I mean, onboarding is a path to credibility, but
Yeah.
credibility is the final destination.
Well, it's not the final because what they actually want is, I want to be seen. I want to hit the ground running. I don't want to lose a lot of momentum so that I could actually do what I'm here to do. So establishing credibility is not the end result, but it's closer to what they actually want compared to effective onboarding.
Yeah, it's closer to being in a promotion cycle that year when you're
Yes.
first hired. It's closer to getting a more visible project, all those other
Yes.
things.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly it.
Well, the title of this is Scale Your Soul Work to 10K a month. So tell us more about copy. How do you write copy for the people who are just starting getting to know you? How do you write copy for people who are like considering your offer? How do you write copy for like people you're about to close or, want to get into a sales call?
Well, when I started, I actually was able to hit 10K consistently without paying that much attention to copy. I was just doing what any PM would do, which is offer my expertise, and I'll just say it the way I see it. So, for example, I used to sell this thing that was called improving your product thinking. And I was able to sell that. I was able hit 10K consistently, but I was not able to scale. I could not figure out how to go from 10 to 20. Um, and then I learned They don't really want to improve product thinking. What they really want is acing their interviews. It's the same thing. And so when I was selling product thinking, I actually had to spend a lot of time explaining why product thinking is good, why product thinking is a game changer, why you need product thinking not just for interviews but also in your role, and how product thinking actually helps you progress as a PM. I did a lot of that when I was trying to sell quote unquote product thinking. But in more simplified terms, what do they actually want? They want to ace their interviews. So when I just changed the copy without changing the actual offer, I was able to scale just from changing words because words is what sells.
I love that because the other Jay-Z and I were talking yesterday about the value of coaching, and it's unclear. Like, is it going to get me more credibility? But it's very clear when you're like, I'm going to ace my design case. I'm going to ace my metrics and execution case. I'm going to make it to like final round. Maybe I'll get an offer. So that like $500,000 total comp is very, very clear what
Mhm.
you get out of coaching.
Yeah. And I basically tested different variations of it. At one point, I was selling navigating PM interviews with ease. That was my copy for some time. But then I just, uh, it's a iterative process. So iterating is very like home play, very natural, organic for PMs. We're very well trained to iterate. So I had various different copies and versions of different copies. It was navigating PM interviews. It was thinking on your feet in PM interviews. And currently, the current version is acing your PM interviews. But you could also argue you don't necessarily want to ace your interview. What you want is to get a job offer that is perfect for you. So basically now I could choose between acing your interviews or getting a dream job, like getting a dream job. So right now I'm leaning towards something that is more of a leading indicator. Leading indicator is acing interviews. Lagging indicator is getting a dream job. So
Mm.
right now, I'm going with the leading indicator, but I might change my mind later depending on, feedback that I get.
I see. So then do you write copy differently for people who are just starting out with interview prep versus people who like know that they need it?
Um, I don't really target people who are just starting out with their interview prep, and I make that clear, or at least I try to make that clear. I The best fit for this particular group program is when you already know what this interview is about. That's how you get the most value out of it. But this is a group setting, so it's very structured, and I could only target a specific segment of people in order to scale. But in a one-on-one coaching environment, then I can be very flexible. I can meet you where you are. So this also comes down to what types of offers do you want to create, what type of people you want to work with, and there's trial and error. So you could decide, you could try one form factor, you could try one segment and then see if you want to stick with that same segment or change it.
Yeah, I have a prospect who's selling test prep for a certification.
Mm,
And so I think that's very clear leading indicator. You know, I have my test in a
yes.
year. I need to start, practice tests now. And then month 6, I need to be acing, some of the tests. And it's very clear, like
Yeah.
backing out the timeline. So
Yes.
you're saying that your ideal customer profile is someone who knows they want to interview with Fang but haven't scheduled it? Or is it someone who's actually scheduled it and they're like, should I delay my interview so I'm more prepared?
So I would say most of the people who find me have their FANG interview scheduled, or at least it's on the horizon. And I would say 80% of those people end up delaying their interviews. Uh, Unless you have gone through this process before, you would know that most of the time we underestimate the amount of prep that you need. So most of the people would delay their interview. But I've also had cases where they've already delayed it once, so they can't delay it some more. So in that type of setup, then we do like a cram day. So we might cram multiple sessions into a week, but I don't recommend that approach because it's a lot more effective if I'm able to work with you 4 weeks in a row versus 4 times in a week. Sometimes you just need time to integrate and practice on your own.
Yeah, so I know we have viewers and I know you have questions in your head. So please, ask those questions. Nancy is a very expensive and sought out coach. So ask her, your design sense or metrics question. Ask her how to be a coach and, start your own solopreneur business. You can leave the comment and type it out. Any advice, Nancy, for people who are starting their coaching business?
I think the most frequently asked question I get is how do you differentiate? There's so many coaches and there's so many experts. How do you stand out? So that in itself is coming from a place where you're looking externally to you. And that's coming from a place where we think that there can only be one winner and that life or career is a zero sum game. We know that that is the case in sports when there's only one winner. But in life and in career, it doesn't have to be that way. So, my perspective on that question in how do you stand out is well, if you just be yourself, by definition, you will stand out because there's no one else like you. You're just unique. And so, by definition, if you just be yourself, you have to be unique. You will stand out. So, that in itself is a different mindset and it's a shift.
We'll come back to that because VCs also want the same thing. But Prachi, thanks for your comment. You're saying to not have to ladder up to anyone and at the same time being able to create impact can be so motivating for so many PMs.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Apache. Thank you for chiming in, and I agree with you. And that's what keeps me going at the end of the day. This journey has surfaced these concepts and these feelings in my body that I had never felt before as a PM. Even when I had a dream job with a dream title at a fancy big tech company, I had never felt fulfillment. I had never felt freedom to this level. So at least on the surface level in big tech, when you have a fancy title on your resume, you might think that this is what dream feels like. But it's not that type of mentality is very egocentric. And when we are operating from a egocentric place, by definition, it does not feed your soul. And so what I mean by the word fulfillment and never felt that before in my big career tech job, that's completely true because when I was in my big career tech job, it was coming from a very egocentric place. I was feeding my ego and I was not feeding my soul. But now I am feeding my soul. So even though that I don't make as much as before, to me, it is worth it because now it feels like I'm actually living and not just going through the motion of living.
Wow, that's such an amazing question, Prachi, and Nancy's such an amazing answer. So, do you think all CEOs feel this way? And I'll give you an example. So, Stitch Fix, the founder and CEO, when she went public, she talks in a lot of podcasts about how scary that was. That she definitely could not be herself. Like suddenly she had publicly traded shareholders who wanted her to ladder up to them, in
Mhm.
addition to the board, in addition to like the employees, and in addition to like the customers and, freelancers and everything else that was this Titanic ship. So do you feel like this is just a feeling for solopreneurs who have like a more simplified stakeholder group, or it's applicable to all founders and CEOs?
I don't know because I've never been a CEO of multiple people. I've only been CEO of myself. Um, I would also say because my business is an extension of me and I'm not creating a product, right? M- What I'm offering is me. I'm offering my knowledge. So that business model is different. So I can't really say how these public company CEOs actually feel. I don't think that they could say their product is them.
Well, I think being a solopreneur coach is a unique position where the product is you, like you
Yes,
said.
the product is me versus in other companies where the product is not really them. So, for example, would you say that Tesla is Elon Musk? Or would you say Twitter is Elon Musk? It's different.
Well, and with all the media attention, who is Elon, right? Like
Right.
he is like 99% with the uh, print and digital media. Think of him that day.
Yeah. 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 But so I can't really say I don't know because I am not I am not selling a different thing from
Yeah.
me. I'm just being myself.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because a lot of the product and tech coaches that I meet, they have to vibe with their students. So, the students have to be coachable, and that's a personality match, right?
Yes.
So, if the student responds to the carrot versus the stick, and you give the opposite as a coach, that's never going to work. So maybe
Right.
that's where the personality really differentiates you.
Yes. And I also believe that I can only resonate with people on the same or similar wavelength as me. That's how people resonate. You have to be on similar frequencies. And that will also mean that I can't ever resonate with everyone. I can't resonate in all spectrums across all frequency levels. I just cannot. That's not possible. That's not how frequency works. And so I can only work with people in similar frequencies as me. And that's perfect for me.
That's so cool because I talk to a lot of VCs who also want to start podcasts. They have their fledgling fund, they have a new thesis, and they're like, I just want to find people who are like me. I want to find LPs and portcos who have my thesis instead of adapting my thesis in a different pitch deck every half hour. I mean, how exhausting would that be? So it's just about finding yourself. And I think this comes back to your original point about self-discovery and
Yes.
the work of finding yourself. I guess my question now is then how do you define your style, like for people who might want to be coached by you?
I am very spiritual. And so I incorporate spirituality into everything that I do because I cannot separate myself from that. That's just who I am. And when we work together, you would see that sometimes I approach it from a very spiritual angle. And that might come in the form of, okay, let's rewire your mindset. Or it might come from a even higher place, as in, okay, I'm going to work on your energy, as in, I'm going to do my thing to heal you on an energetic layer. Like that is very spiritual. And so my work spans body, mind, and spirit. So body is the tactical stuff. Tactical means if we're working on interviews together, here's what you say, here's the framework. That's body, that's very tactical. And then another layer out of that's mind. So that's where we're working on mindset. And what I love is to preach the abundance mindset. We are all here to experience abundance, and that is just a universal truth that I choose to believe in. And from that angle, my mindset will be very different from someone whose mindset is coming from scarcity mode, and like playing the game where life is zero sum. That's not the game that I choose to play in. So that's mindset. And then spirit, that's where I work on your energy level. So yesterday I had a coaching call, and before going into the coaching session, I tune into their energy because I'm a little bit intuitive. I tune into their energy, and in the coaching call, she actually prepared for our call in advance, and she typed up this document she wanted me to review, and then I said, "I don't think this is actually what you need." But this feeling that I have is just based on my intuition. It's when I tune into your energy. So in that call, I said, I don't really want to discuss your document and even though that you worked really hard on it. What I really wanted to talk about is this other thing. And that is just a signal that I picked up when I was tuning into your energy. So that is me working on the spiritual layer. So that's just how I work.
Now I'm so curious, and this will probably be our last question because I know you have a hard stop. What was the thing you wanted to help her with instead?
Yeah. So we are working on helping her transition from one role to another role and from one company to another company. She gave me a document of how she plans to answer interview questions, like tell me about yourself, your weaknesses, your strengths, etc. It's a long document. And then I just thought, I don't think this is what you need. What you actually need is to look at your target companies, as in not specific company names, but let's first talk about the different stages of companies. And there's three or four, depending on how you categorize. It's really just pre PMF, and then post PMF, and then hypergrowth, and then super scale. That's the four stages of company. Let's talk about how you might learn from a pre PMF company and what you won't learn. And let's talk about what you will learn in a hypergrowth company versus what you won't learn. And let's talk about what you will learn in super scale, like a Facebook or a Google. What are you going to learn versus what you won't learn? So we actually didn't spend any time going over her document. We just talked about this framework that really just organizes companies depending on the stage. And when it just so that in itself is a tactical thing. That's in the body layer. It's very tactical. But I knew to talk about that by tuning into her energy ahead of time. And as a result of just me just going over the different company stages and talking about what you think you will learn and what you won't learn, then we realized what she actually wanted is to target hypergrowth companies based on her strengths and based on what she wants out of her next role and how she could then position herself to target the hypergrowth companies. So because of that conversation, she actually needed to rewrite a lot of her stories in the document that she sent me.
I see. So you knew that she was kind of trying to fit herself into every situation.
Well, I didn't know that hypergrowth would be the right type of company for her. But I felt like she wasn't clear. Like it wasn't clear enough for her to actually tell a story around it. And that actually starts from a place of self awareness. You have to be really clear on what you want. And before I laid out that framework, she couldn't explain it herself. She said, well, I was in pre PMF and I've also been in a large scale company. I want something in the middle. But when you frame it that way, that's not an attractive thing to talk about in an interview. That's not good framing. Because what that framing is, well, I did this and I did that. Now I want to do something different. Versus in the framework that I showed her, you're really pinpointing what this company needs in hypergrowth and how you can add value to them. It was through that exercise that actually could help her with her own storytelling, but that came from a place of me tuning into her energy on an intuitive level.
Yeah, that's so important because, like, in dating or hiring, you want to hear that the candidate has always wanted what you want. So they
Yes.
have to be super focused and clear.
Yes, that's correct. So that comes from deep self-awareness, but I wouldn't have known that if I didn't tune into her energy. If I just went through her document, I wouldn't we wouldn't get to this level of clarity.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think you felt like there was no clarity, and instead of making her everything to everyone, you had this like higher level of spiritual
Yeah.
focus. Well, Nancy, I could talk to you forever.
I know, me
And
too.
but we're at the hour mark. So what is the next step for people who want you to help them?
You can find me on my LinkedIn /Nancy Chu, and we can go from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
This is a really spiritual conversation. It says volumes about you. So thank you. And
Yeah, thank you for
then,
having me.
I know this is a reschedule. So for anyone who's watching from the original time, we'll try to make the most of this opportunistic reschedule by having you comment questions on the feed or bring your questions directly to Nancy.
Yes, sounds good. I'll be in the comments, so I will see you there.
Okay.
I will see you in the comments.
And I'll give a last plug. So for anyone who wants to book more calls as a coach by being yourself in a podcast, visit my website, givetake.callmejz.ai, or message me, book a call with me, and see how we can have the same conversation, almost do a live coaching, or display your coaching niche on a podcast.
I love
we'll
that.
just take it from there. Leave it there. All right. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, JZ. Until next time.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.